Corporate South Africa is mourning the passing of former Eskom board chair Jabu Mabuza. According to a family statement, Mabuza succumbed to COVID-19 related complications last night. Mabuza is widely recognized as a business leader who was committed to the transformation of South Africa. He recently stepped down as the interim executive chair as well as acting group chief executive of Eskom. He also served as chair of Business Leadership South Africa, Telkom, Sun International, and a number of private concerns, including InBev SAB Miller's Africa business. Now, a sense of what we should make of this is what we're discussing now. Let's bring in Bonang Mohale. He is the chancellor at the University of the Free State and joins us now via our video link. Dr. Mohale, it's great to have you with us. Stumbling over my words because it's difficult to try and make sense of how we should move forward from here on. But let's perhaps begin by speaking about the man himself. Great business acumen, but also just a great guy.
He was an incredible, good quality human being, absolutely inimitable. He served on the boards of no less than 15 companies. He loved life with the most amazing passion. He lived it to the fullest, the most incredible, beautiful soul. We really send our heartfelt and sincere condolences to Sispiwe, his children, the Mshengu clan, but also his friends. I think it demonstrates beyond any shadow of doubt the reason why we isolate now, so that when we gather again, no one is missing Ayanda.
Yeah. And that gap, that sense of loss is certainly going to be felt in the world of business. But of course, Jabu Mabuza had his expertise across various spheres of life. Many people might not know that he also had a doctorate in commerce.
In fact, when he was awarded his doctorate by Wits University, led by Professor Adam Habib at that time, honoris causa, of course, he asked me to officiate. We worked very closely with Sotobe Ubabu Begisbia, who was the first MD of Business Unity South Africa that he ended up, Ubabu, Dr. Jabulani, Albert Mabuza, being a president of. I remember we went to him asking him to be the single face of business, by asking him to be the boss of 3 entities at the same time, to be president of BUSA, to be president of the CEO initiative, and to be chairman of Business Leadership South Africa. He went on to persuade me when I took an early retirement at age 55 to come in as the CEO of BLSA. At that time, there were 35 CEOs. We built this organization up to have 89 CEOs. This organization that was founded in 1960, even before I was born, for 2 primary reasons: to defend apartheid and for sanction busting. Both of us were absolutely convinced that this is an excellent candidate for transformation. How do we eat this monster from inside? And we started, of course, by focusing deliberately, purposefully, and consciously on Bell Pottinger, which we succeeded in killing in 6 months. Ayanda?
Yeah. The symbol of Jabu Mabuza is also very important. Here is a black man who, in many instances, had to work against the odds to get where he was, and very few people, if anyone at all, could ever question his capability. How do we ensure someone like that is not forgotten, especially in a context where there's just so much loss?
You see, we need to continue to canonize incredible talent like him to truly be in the presence of dignified greatness from the black pool of excellence. My grandmother used to say, until and unless lions have their own storytellers, stories about hunting will always glorify the hunter. Here we are 27 years into democracy. If we are not telling the stories of our own giants, incredible, good quality human beings like Dr. Jabulani, Albert Mabuza, then who's going to do it? I mean, I remember when he was expelled as a result of what happened on June 16, 1976. One of truly incredible human beings who was a revolutionary and a mentor to the 16th June 1976 youth, Reverend Mushwabada Castro Mayatula, who was born in 1921, when he implored all of us that we dream of a nation with people who are empowered, who are self-reliant, who are selfless, who are skilled, who are free from corruption and with high morals and ethical values. I think Ubabu, Dr. Jabulane Albert Mabuza, demonstrated that he had no time to rest. He was too young to wallow in the surplus of his imagination. He served South Africa with distinction, singularity of purpose. He went on, of course, to serve in academia on the council of the UNISA School of Business Leadership. He was a lead independent director at MultiChoice. He chaired Anheuser-Busch InBev South Africa. He was the CEO of Tsugosan, but he went on to be a member of the board and ultimately chaired Sun International. I loved the absolute ground that he walked on, and he was larger than life. When we submitted his name to National Treasury, he was very reluctant as one of the 5 that BLSA put to be seriously considered to be the board of Eskom. Ultimately, he agreed, and he ended up to chair that board that was led by Ubabu Pagamani Hadebe. They put in a new strategy, and they put systems and processes in place that allowed us as BLSA to consider Eskom as the very first company to have its suspension lifted from BLSA. You will remember that the very first company that we suspended was KPMG, then Eskom, then Transnet, and then, of course, amongst others, Bain Consulting. But he had worked so hard that all of us at the board of BLSA were convinced that he deserved, together with his board and the executives, to have this suspension lifted, because energy is indeed the 4th means of production.
Right. Of course, we could spend the whole day speaking about his accolades because of, I guess, the caliber of person he was. Take me, though, to the interpersonal relationship you had with him. Naturally, at a time like this, you'll be looking back at fond memories. Can you share any one of those that you might have shared with Jabu Mabuza with us?
There are too many to mention, but I remember when we went to Sefako Makhatu Presidential Guest House, invited by the former president, in fact, Kele Hlegisa Zuma, at the height of state capture, how we looked him in the eye and said, Mr. President, I think you need to stop aiding and abetting state capture. And he said, but what is state capture? And we said, you've always asked this question, but we know that you not only are the architect and the crucible of state capture, that this is both systemic and systematic. And to be able to look the president in his own home ground and be able to say this in his face was truly extraordinary. There were 100 of us in that room at that time. I worked with him very closely when we went to the World Economic Forum. We worked very closely. We put 8 World Economic Forums, African chapters, initially at the Durban ICC with him. And, you know, he'd walk into a room and fill the room with his energy, with his passion. And then lastly, of course, we worked with him at Busa, and we worked very hard to try and bring back the Black Business Council. At that time, the president was Ndabantsele, and we said, you know, we saw with grave concern how on the way to Polokwane, 2007, the ANC was fractured. It took us 20 years to put COSATU together, and how itself was fractured when 800,000 members pulled away with NUMSA's Ivan Jean, and we should not allow business also to be fractured, because those that were aiding and abetting state capture had learned that you need to divide and rule. That's how you could extend one's hegemony. We spoke and we planned and we agitated and we orchestrated. I'm very happy that we now have a president in Babu Sandile Zungu together with Date Khanki Mataban, who are of the same mind that business is stronger together.
Absolutely. It's incredibly difficult to make sense of where we are without reflecting on how things could have been so different if our vaccination drive was what it was hoped to be initially. How do we then, I guess, use this as a moment to at least hone in on that, without, of course, taking away from the necessary time and space needed to mourn, really, the passing of a giant?
I think it's ironic that he was consumed by this monster called the coronavirus pandemic. At the time that he had put the systems and processes in place, the foundation, one brick at a time, in heeding the call when the president set us a herd immunity target of 67%. That's 40 million people, the entire adult population of 60 million South Africans. In January of last year, when we were set this target, we did the math and said we need to be inoculating at a rate of 100,000 South Africans a day, every day. Had we done that in January, it would have taken us 400 days or 13.3 months to be able to reach this herd immunity. The Minister of Health at that time, Dr. Zolini Mkhize, also set us a target of 1.2 million frontline healthcare workers, because these are the people who are in the cold face. We missed all of those targets. As we speak now, we need to be inoculating at a rate of 350,000 South Africans a day, every day. So at the end of March, when we looked, we had only inoculated 350,000. When we finished phase 1 and we started with phase 2, we had not totally completed the first phase. At that time, honestly, 350,000 only South Africans. Even as we speak today, we are barely touching 1.2 million South Africans that are inoculated. You see, the vaccine rollout was always going to be a race, because the country that would achieve herd immunity first will then be able to reap the pent-up global tourism demand. As I speak to you today, in fact, 12 countries have inoculated more than 100% of their population. Even when you compare ourselves with BRICS counterparts, on the 27th of January, and I'm looking at only doses, vaccine doses administered, Brazil was already 579,000. And Russia was on 2 million at that time, China 15 million. I think all of us now are concerned that even when you compare ourselves with our own continent of Africa, 29 African countries are ahead of us. Only 26 are behind us. 22 countries in the world are now opening their borders to people that have been successfully vaccinated without asking them for self-quarantine or even to do self-isolation. All they have to do is to produce just the certificate that says they've been vaccinated.
Yeah, it really is, I guess, the painting of a picture of just how far behind we are, and if that wasn't the case, perhaps we wouldn't be here having this discussion. Thanks so much for your reflections. Really appreciate your tribute to Jabu Mabuza on really a difficult time, not only in the world of business, but certainly the country over. Bonang Mohale is the Chancellor at the University of the Free State. Appreciate your time once again, sir. Thanks very much indeed.